Welcome to Ancient Wisdom Unlocked, where timeless wisdom meets your modern life. In today's world, where every piece of information is just a click away, it's easy to confuse knowing a lot with being wise. We accumulate facts and figures like a shield, a way to present ourselves, or even to hide the gnawing insecurity that we're just not enough. But have you ever felt that the more you know, the more lost you become? Here at Ancient Wisdom Unlocked, we believe true wisdom isn't about the data you possess, but the depth of your understanding. If you crave a life that's not just intelligent but insightful, not just successful but deeply peaceful from within, then you've found your sanctuary. Join us as we explore ancient truths, the teachings that shaped great minds throughout history, and discover the path to becoming your most powerful, clear, and authentic self. 1. Strategic wisdom, seeing clearly to act right. Today, everything is searchable in seconds. People start confusing knowing a lot with having wisdom. They accumulate information as a way to protect themselves, to express themselves, and to hide the insecurity that they are not enough. But knowledge doesn't equal wisdom. A knowledgeable person can say many things, but a wise person usually says only what needs to be said at the right time, to the right person, and in the right context. Intelligence, as most people understand it, is the ability to process information quickly, remember well, and reason sharply. That's a very useful capacity, but it's not enough to guide a lifetime. There are many intelligent people who live in chaos. They might win arguments but fail in their own decisions. They can meticulously plan a project but don't know how to live a life without regrets. Intelligence is quickness, but wisdom is profound insight. Strategic wisdom, the kind a true talent possesses, doesn't come from books or classrooms. It comes from a very special kind of seeing what's true. Seeing true isn't about seeing what you want to see, but seeing things as they actually are. When you clearly see a problem unclouded by expectations, fears, or reactive habits, you'll instinctively know what to do. You won't need to force a decision. The right action will naturally emerge from clear seeing. A person with strategic wisdom doesn't ask, "How can I win?" but "What is the true nature of this situation?" They don't rush to choose the best option on paper, but take the time to accurately identify the problem. They know that if they start by seeing wrongly, all subsequent efforts will be meaningless. When you have clear seeing, you'll know when to advance, when to retreat, when to stay silent, and when to act. You won't get pulled into unnecessary games, nor will you miss rare opportunities. Strategic wisdom is the ability to see through life's chaos to find the crucial point, the place where, with one right action, everything else will move in the right direction. The truth is, many people fail not because they don't try, but because they try in the wrong way. They think they're progressing, but they're just circling in a labyrinth created by their own minds. And that labyrinth is built from old knowledge, blind beliefs, and unconscious reactions. Conversely, a person with strategic wisdom doesn't chase new knowledge like an information addict. This clarity is the core quality of wisdom. They are not bewildered, not confused, not manipulated by emotions or crowd trends. They don't follow instinct, nor are they rigidly bound by rules. They are flexible like water, yet deeply rooted like an ancient tree. And that's the first foundation. If you want to become a truly influential person, a talent capable of leading and mastering your own life, you must first learn to see truly. Not to see what you want to see, but to see what is. Not to see with intellect, but to see with inner stillness. From clear seeing, the right action will spontaneously arise. And at that point, you no longer need to decide. You just need to live. 2. Intelligent action. True talents don't do more, they do right. In this world, productivity is lauded, diligence praised, and busyness often becomes a measure of self-worth. But the reality shows that those who truly achieve great things don't necessarily do more. They do right. They don't run around putting out fires every day. They find the source of the fire and decisively extinguish it at the root. Average people try to cover everything. Truly talented individuals focus only on what creates real change. This is the essence of the 80/20th principle, or at a deeper level for true masters, the 95/5ths. According to the 80/20th principle, 20% of actions yield 70 to 80% of results. But truly exceptional individuals don't stop there. They realize that often only 5% of what they do, 5% of the decisions they make, generate up to 95% of meaningful change. Therefore, they don't waste energy on scattered efforts or superficial embellishments. They refine their wisdom and pour all their strength into crucial points. When you work by trying to cover everything, you'll always be tired, short on time, and easily discouraged because you can't distinguish what's essential. But when you live and act according to the principle of refinement, sharpness emerges. Every step you take has a ripple effect. Every word you speak carries weight. Every decision you make creates a long-term flow. But how do you spot the crucial point in a chaotic situation? First, you must learn not to react immediately. When everything is swirling, the average person will act on instinct, worry, rush, or try to control. A wise person will observe. They temporarily pause everything, not out of fear, but because they need to see the full picture. They don't act in chaos. They wait to identify the knot and untie it correctly. Like a skilled surgeon, they don't just cut randomly. They diagnose the precise pain point, the exact area requiring intervention. A person who does right isn't someone who's good at everything, but someone who knows what they need to do most, and only does that. In real life, chaotic situations often confuse people. A business facing a crisis, a family dealing with conflict, or an individual standing at a crossroads all tend to get absorbed by the surface. Those lacking wisdom will get caught up in treating symptoms. Those with wisdom will seek the root cause. They don't try to extinguish the flames. They find and remove the fuse. A good leader isn't someone who makes many decisions every day. They only need to make one right decision and let that decision adjust the rest. A good entrepreneur isn't someone who takes on every role, but someone who dares to let go, delegate, and choose the right battles. Doing right doesn't mean randomly getting it right, but cultivating the ability to distinguish between what's essential and what's superfluous, the root and the branch. To do that, you must look deeply beyond the surface of the situation. You must ask, where does the real problem lie? If I could only do one thing, what would it be? What is the one thing that if I solve it, all other problems will disappear or diminish? Truly capable people don't add more. They constantly subtract and eliminate. This isn't laziness, but the wisdom of restraint. They understand that energy is finite and sharpness only comes when you stop fragmenting your focus. Masters live like martial artists. Every strike is decisive, every step is meaningful, every second is critical. They aren't constantly tensed, but when they need to act, it's a strike of wisdom, not emotion. Living this way is not only effective, but also lighter, because you're not caught in the vortex of doing much, but going nowhere. You walk fewer steps, but go further. You don't fight against everything. You choose the right battle, and you don't need to strain because you clearly see where to make impact. That's the difference between someone who lives to react and someone who lives to create. Those who do much often merely exist. Those who do right lead the way. 3. The mind of a strategist. Shaping the future instead of reacting to the present. An average person thinks to react. An intelligent person thinks to cope. But a true strategist, someone with strategic wisdom, doesn't just think to solve current problems, but to guide the future and master the overall situation. In daily life, most human thoughts originate from 3 different levels, but the majority get stuck at the lowest level, instinct, reflex, and strategy. Instinct is the most primitive layer of thought. It's not truly thinking, but an immediate physical reaction to external stimuli. When you jump at a loud noise, get angry when insulted, or panic when you lose money, that's instinct. It appears without processing, lacks depth, and often leads to errors. If you act based on it, instinct helps you survive, but it doesn't help you live subtly. Reflex is the second layer, more refined than instinct, but still within old patterns. This is the result of accumulated experience, long-held beliefs, and educational conditioning. When you face a situation similar to one in the past, your mind draws on that experience and repeats the old solution. Reflexes might seem smart, but lack creativity. People who live entirely by reflexes may appear fluent, but they are actually repeating themselves in a changing world. Strategy is the highest level of thinking. This is when you no longer think about escaping a problem, but begin to look more broadly to redefine the context. A person with strategic thinking doesn't stop at the question, "How do I handle this?" but always asks, "How do I redesign this?" They don't get stuck in the problem. They observe the whole, discover patterns, and create new ways of playing. Thinking like a strategist doesn't mean always calculating. It means living with a mind that has foresight. You don't just see what happens, you see the trends, the consequences, and the underlying currents shaping the outcome. A person with strategic wisdom is like someone standing on high ground, seeing the entire map. While others only see the immediate fork in the road, they look through the fluctuations to find the main current. Amidst a chaotic society, they don't ask, "Where is it safe to go?" but "What mindset will remain steadfast in any circumstance?" Orienting wisdom isn't about predicting the future, but deciphering the rules currently at play. They don't seek luck, but design conditions for luck to become inevitable. They don't rely on vague intuition, but combine the depth of experience with the sharpness of reason. A strategist never lets the external world dominate their internal world. Even when making decisions under pressure, they maintain clarity. They don't panic at change because they are accustomed to living with change as part of life. They don't passively chase opportunities, they create opportunities. Strategic thinking doesn't come from rote learning. It comes from stopping long enough to look very closely. It requires you to shed layers of prejudice, discard the smallest desires, and bravely enter the zone of uncertainty. There, you truly train your inner eye, the eye that can see through the layers of a problem. Thinking like a strategist also doesn't mean you have to always think in complex ways. On the contrary, people with orienting wisdom are often very simple in their way of life. They don't get tangled up in minutiae or dwell on small details because they clearly see what is crucial. They can discard what's unnecessary and keep only the core. Their simplicity is the result of a profound process of refinement, not superficiality. When you live with strategic thinking, you will no longer be swayed by fleeting emotions. You won't get pulled into meaningless arguments. You will know when to stay silent, when to act. You won't live to react, but to orchestrate. And above all, you will feel something very unique. The clearer you become, the more understandable the world around you becomes. The more insightful you are, the smoother everything operates. Not because the world changes, but because you are standing at a different vantage point. The vantage point of a strategist. Someone who isn't just living for today, but is quietly shaping the future. 4. Fortitude in big decisions. The courage to step into uncertainty. Everyone's life has crossroads where a single wrong turn can lead to a whole lifetime off course. These are moments where you can't go back, nor can you move forward with old ways of thinking. Big decisions don't just change external situations, they shape the person within. And it's in these moments that true fortitude reveals itself most clearly. People often procrastinate on big decisions, waiting until things are clearer, there's more data, or they feel more confident. But paradoxically, the bigger the choice, the more it precedes the data. The turning points in your life, choosing a career path, leaving an old environment, starting a new project, or ending an overdue relationship, often don't give you enough information. They demand that you act in ambiguity, walk through fog, and you'll never truly feel ready. When you stand before a big decision, the issue is no longer about analyzing right or wrong, but about having the courage to commit. There are times when you have to take a gamble, not because you love risk, but because you've recognized the limits of analysis. Wisdom can bring you to the edge of the precipice, but to jump, you need courage. And sometimes that very leap, even without a guarantee, is what opens up new horizons. Faint-hearted people often live with the question, what if I make a mistake? But people with fortitude live with a different question. If I don't do this, will I regret it? It's not that they don't fear making mistakes, they just don't let fear prevent them from moving forward. Because they know a wrong choice can be corrected, but a life of never daring to choose will erode the spirit day by day. Big decisions demand that you touch the roots of your being. They force you to answer, who are you? What do you truly want? What values will you not compromise? And what are you willing to sacrifice? The clearer you are on these things, the less you will waver in stormy seas. You don't need all the data if you are clear enough about yourself. Many people fail not because they choose wrongly, but because they choose and then doubt, go and then regret, act and then hesitate. Fortitude isn't just about making the decision. It's about being fully committed to your choice. Once you've seen clearly and chosen, go all the way. Don't let your mind drag you back to the starting point, like someone who walks while constantly looking back. A right choice isn't one without risks. It's a choice whose consequences you can bear without losing respect for yourself. Because ultimately, what makes a person truly capable isn't always choosing correctly, but living fully with that choice, learning from it, and growing through it. In a world full of data but lacking clarity, the person with fortitude doesn't demand complete information. They only need one clear point, one unwavering principle, one value they won't sell cheaply, one vision they are willing to live and die for. From that clear point, they act not in blind recklessness, but in quiet commitment. And strangely enough, that very commitment clarifies the rest. What was vague begins to dissipate. What was unclear gradually takes shape. And with every step you take with clarity and courage, the path ahead widens. Not because it was already there, but because you dared to step forward. No decision is ever truly certain. But one thing is always certain. Without deciding, you will never grow. And sometimes daring to choose amidst chaos, fear, and uncertainty is the very sign that you are no longer living in your comfort zone. You don't need to know everything, but you must be clear enough about what's worth choosing. And once you've chosen, let your whole body, mind, and spirit move forward on that path without hesitation. Because true growth doesn't come from what we know, but from what we dare to live through. 5. Wisdom in small choices, building your life. Day by day, people often think their lives only change when they face a major crossroads. But the truth is, most of life's outcomes don't come from monumental decisions, but from countless small choices repeated daily. What you choose for breakfast, how you react when criticized, when you start work, whether you read a book or scroll social media before bed. All these seemingly insignificant things are quietly shaping who you are. Failure rarely comes from one big fall. It's often sown by small, unnoticed missteps. One procrastination, one concession to laziness, one time you allow yourself to drift with emotion. These seemingly harmless ones are the smoldering embers of a long-term fire. And then you wake up years later realizing you've drifted far from the person you once wanted to be. Not because you chose the wrong path, but because you didn't control the small steps along that path. A wise person isn't just alert when facing big decisions. They establish systems so they don't have to expend energy on small choices. They understand that every time you hesitate, you deplete willpower, and if you don't have clear systems, you'll use up all your willpower deciding trivial things. Then, when a crucial decision is needed, you're too exhausted to be clear-headed. A system isn't a rigid mold. It's an intelligent structure that minimizes the need to make emotional decisions. For example, if you know mornings are when your mind is sharpest, you'll set a fixed block for deep work each morning. No thinking, no negotiating with yourself. That's not coercion. It's freeing yourself from distraction. Or if you've determined a healthy and energizing meal plan, you'll stick to it as a habit so you don't have to fight cravings every day or deliberate among countless options. Successful people aren't those with superhuman willpower. They're those who design environments and habits that reduce the need for constant willpower. Wisdom in small choices is the ability to recognize that today's ease will become tomorrow's burden. A minute of indulgence can lead to hours of regret, but one right action, however small, can build momentum for a powerful day. Discerning individuals don't wait for the ideal moment to change. They start with the mundane. They can control their attitude, choices, and daily habits. On the journey to becoming a true talent, you can't rely on short-term inspiration. You need long-term structure. That's why reprogramming your daily chain of small choices is mandatory, not optional. Great individuals don't live by impulse but by principles that have been carefully refined. And among those principles, small choices play a core role. You don't need to control the whole world. You just need to master the choices you face frequently. Write down your typical daily choices. What do you do each morning? How do you react when tired? How do you cope with stress? If you see a pattern of unconscious choices, that's where you need to make changes. The more you simplify your decision-making, the more energy you conserve for things that require true clarity. A top CEO might wear the same type of clothes every day, not because they lack taste, but because they don't want to waste brain power on choosing outfits. They reserve their wisdom for bigger matters. When you let small choices operate by system, you'll have more mental space for deep thinking, for creativity, for self-reflection. You won't be stuck in daily reactions, but will step into a state of proactive living, directed living, architected living. And one day you'll look back and see that precisely because of those small, consistently right choices, you avoided countless major mistakes. You no longer have to constantly try to improve your life because your life has been reprogrammed, right down to the smallest detail. You no longer have to fight every day because the system is fighting for you. That's how wise people live, not loudly, not hastily, but precisely. And that precision elevates them to a level others perceive as luck, when in reality, it's the inevitable outcome of thousands of small, correctly made choices. 6. The art of letting go. Decisive release for true freedom. In a world that praises accumulation, people learn to hoard knowledge, assets, relationships, experiences. They believe that the more they have, the stronger they are. The more they know, the wiser. The more they cling, the safer. But the truth is, the more you hold on to, the heavier you become. The more you cling, the harder it is to move forward. And the most remarkable thing is that truly great leaps forward often occur after a decisive act of letting go. People usually think letting go is a sign of failure. They fear being seen as quitters, losers, or lacking perseverance. But truly wise individuals understand that letting go at the right time is a form of mastery. It's not giving up out of weakness, but letting go because you've clearly seen what's essential and what's merely taking up space. Letting go is an art because it's not just an action, it's a profound choice. You don't let go because you have nothing left to hold on to, but because you've understood that holding on further is unnecessary. Clinging to a job that no longer serves you just for security is selling yourself short. Holding onto a decaying relationship out of fear of loneliness is self-imprisonment. Maintaining an old lifestyle, even knowing it's eroding you, is refusing to step out of the darkness. Wise people don't measure fortitude by their ability to endure, but by their ability to let go in the right places. Sometimes letting go is harder than holding on, because holding on is often instinctive, while letting go is an act of clear seeing. Letting go doesn't mean doing nothing. Letting go means stopping the right thing. It's when you realize that further effort won't help and might even harm. It's when you stop straining, not out of exhaustion, but because you know that straining is just clinging to an illusion. Letting go doesn't have to be grand. Sometimes it's just letting go of an expectation. You stop forcing yourself to be perfect. You stop demanding others understand you. You stop insisting life unfolds according to your imagined script. And that's when you step into a different level of living, lighter, brighter, and more at ease. There are things you can't hold on to by sheer willpower. The harder you try to grasp them, the more they slip through your fingers, like water, like time, like others' emotions. What needs to be held on to is inner clarity. The rest, let it go. Not because you're indifferent, but because you're no longer passively identified with it. People who live deeply don't try to control everything. They only hold on to what's truly worth keeping. The rest, they let life run its course. What's amazing is that precisely in this letting go, a higher order begins to emerge. When you stop using force to control, life's natural intelligence begins to lead the way. Letting go isn't just a skill, it's a quality of a mature inner being. It requires you to overcome the fear of loss, the obsession with proving yourself, and the bottomless greed of the ego. And once you overcome that, you'll find that what's truly essential never disappears. What leaves when you let go is something that was never truly yours to begin with. Wise people never let go haphazardly. They let go with purpose to create space. And in that space, new possibilities emerge. A new perspective, a healthier relationship, a deeper way of living, and sometimes even a clearer, more refined, and stronger self will step forth from that very act of letting go. The world teaches you how to get more, but only when you learn to let go of less will you truly step into the league of free individuals. Freedom doesn't come from controlling everything, but from no longer being dependent on what no longer serves you. And paradoxically, those who dare to let go are often the ones who retain the most, because what remains after you've let go of everything unnecessary is what's truly precious. Core values, character, fortitude, wisdom, and your authentic self, unburdened by any illusions. 7. Building inner strength, a sustainable power source from within. Most people live by motivation, that fleeting burst of inspiration that instantly vanishes when life gets tough. They seek out inspirational videos, uplifting quotes, or success stories to push themselves forward. But motivation isn't sustainable, and those who rely on it are like sailors navigating by waves. When the wind dies, they sink. Emotion-driven people act when they feel excited. They start easily but struggle to maintain momentum. They need to feel right to act, to be inspired to progress, but emotions are fickle, so their lives fluctuate accordingly. Such people often live in cycles: enthusiastic beginnings, struggling maintenance, then giving up due to exhaustion. Conversely, principled individuals don't depend on excitement. They don't act because they feel like it. They act because they know it's what needs to be done. For them, action doesn't need to be justified by emotion. This is why they can repeat a task silently, without grandstanding, without complaining, and without wavering. Inner strength isn't a positive emotional state, it's a robust inner structure. It's like a silent pillar supporting an entire building, unseen, but without it, everything crumbles. Those with inner strength don't try hard. They've designed their lives with a clear architecture. They know precisely what they're aiming for, what's non-negotiable, and what core values they will never compromise no matter what happens. Building inner strength is about creating a life not controlled by fleeting emotions. It's waking up early not because you're motivated, but because that's the time you've chosen for important work. It's refusing to procrastinate, not because you're fired up, but because you've established a non-negotiable principle with yourself. It's still working on tired days, maintaining discipline when no one is watching, and keeping promises to yourself even when no one else knows. A person living with inner strength can be very quiet. They don't show off, don't need slogans, don't seek transient inspiration. They are people who move steadily forward, one sure step at a time, day after day, without veering off course. Their stability isn't because life is easy, but because within them there's an unshakable pillar. The discipline that those with inner strength build isn't rigid coercion. It's a soft discipline, not straining, but also not giving in. They don't need to be harsh with themselves because they understand the deeper reasons why they tend to drift. They learn to observe, adjust their environment, and eliminate temptations before they become problems. This is a form of living wisdom, not fighting against oneself, but also not compromising with weakness. Those who live by inner strength don't need external motivation. They don't wait for applause, don't need external validation, because what drives them isn't reward, but inner alignment. When what they do matches what they believe, when their external life harmonizes with their internal principles, they become a unified whole, and that very unity is the most sustainable source of power. There's a paradox. Those who chase motivation often weaken, while those who don't seek it but quietly forge their core from within become unshakable. They might not always be overflowing with energy, but they still move forward. They don't avoid exhaustion, but they don't collapse because they are no longer dependent on inspiration. They are the source of power themselves. Inner strength doesn't come from what you read, but from what you live through. Every time you overcome temptation, every time you uphold a principle in solitude, every time you rise after a setback, all of this quietly lays the foundation for a person who doesn't rely on their mental weather to keep moving. You don't need to be a hero, don't need to be dazzling. You just need to become someone you can trust. Someone who, no matter what, will not abandon what they've chosen. And such a person doesn't need motivation to live a great life. They are already great from within. 8. Mastering energy. Managing your biorhythm and mindset for peak performance. Many people rush to find ways to manage their time as if their problem lies in the number of hours in a day. But the truth is, you don't lack time. You're just spending your energy inefficiently, because time is fixed, but energy fluctuates. And an effective person isn't someone with the most time, but someone who knows how to master their energy at the right time, for the right task, at the right pace. You might spend 10 hours a day working, but if you do so in a state of fatigue, distraction, and frustration, those 10 hours are no better than a prolonged dream. Conversely, someone who knows how to use their golden 3 hours a day with focused energy, sharp mind, and clear state of mind can achieve what others need a whole week to complete. The core of mastering energy lies in knowing where you are in your biorhythm and knowing how to adjust your mindset to avoid energy leaks. The human body is not a machine that runs uniformly from morning to night. It has cycles, and a discerning person will live according to those cycles, rather than forcing themselves to work against their biological flow. One of the most important cycles is the energy cycle, which typically lasts 120 minutes. After each deep work session within this time frame, the body needs to rest to regenerate. If you try to work continuously for many hours without a break, you won't be more productive. You'll just be damaging your own nervous system. That's why intelligent people aren't those who work the most, but those who know how to pause at the right moment to maintain depth, before each work session. Recognizing your golden hours in the day, the times when you are most focused and alert, is a crucial step to optimizing your energy. For many, that's early morning. For others, it might be after physical activity. Whatever that time is, you need to protect it. Don't let it be invaded by emails, messages, trivial tasks, or unconscious reactions. That time must be reserved for your most important work, your most strategic tasks, or tasks requiring the highest creativity. But biorhythm alone isn't enough. An equally important factor is managing your mental flow, because emotions, anxiety, distraction, and unconscious reactions are the biggest culprits of energy leakage. An hour of work in a state of confusion, lack of direction, or emotional turmoil will exhaust you as if you've run a marathon. Wise people don't expend energy coping with emotions. They observe emotions, don't identify with them, and through cultivated stillness, they let emotions pass like clouds, not needing to suppress them, but also not getting swept away by them. This is the intersection of neuroscience and mindful meditation. Modern research has shown that people who meditate regularly have faster energy regeneration, deeper concentration, and shorter recovery times after stress than average people. Not because they are superhuman, but because they know how to regulate their brain state and autonomous nervous system. When you meditate daily, even for just 10 minutes, you are training your brain to stop reacting and start getting familiar with an observational mode. You create space between stimulus and response, and that very space is where energy is restored. The mind clarifies and intuition begins to work. People who live by intrinsic energy don't need to always be excited, always positive. They don't try to constantly stoke the fire, but learn to nurture a smoldering but steady flame. They don't chase fleeting impulses, but live with a deep, consistent, and clear rhythm. That's the rhythm of a rooted life. This also helps them not get caught in society's frantic pace. When others rush to do more, they return to doing right. When others force themselves to do extra, they know when to stop to recover. When others push themselves to the brink of exhaustion, they quietly retreat, like an artisan tending a fire in winter. Ultimately, you are not judged by the hours you spend working, but by the quality of spirit you bring to every task you do. A tired person cannot inspire. A chaotic person cannot create order. An empty person cannot contribute anything lasting. And so, before you try to manage your time, stop and ask yourself, am I mastering my own energy? Am I living in alignment with my biorhythm and mental rhythm? And if not, this is the time to reconstruct your deep inner structure, where clarity, vitality, and true depth begin to emerge. 9. A solid self, unwavering peace from within. Peace doesn't come from a quiet environment, but from being stable enough within yourself. You can't control the world, but you can build a self that the world cannot manipulate. When your inner core is strong enough, every external fluctuation is just a ripple on the surface of the water, unable to touch the deepest layers of your being. A solid self is not a special personality, nor is it an image constructed to impress. It is something deeper, an internal sense of self, not defined by fame, possessions, or external validation. Those with a solid self don't need to assert themselves because they don't live to become anything. They just live in accordance with the truth present within them. Most modern people live without roots. They are pulled by societal expectations, temporary standards, achievements that others deem valuable. They become a copy chasing external approval instead of being themselves. They don't know who they are, they only know who they need to resemble. And in that confusion, they easily become bewildered, easily hurt, easily broken when facing adversity. Conversely, those with a solid self are not dependent on appearances. They don't overly care what others think, nor are they swayed by praise or criticism. They don't need acceptance to feel valuable. They live from an inner point of stillness, where they are not defined by success or failure. From there, they can make clearer decisions, act more generously, and lead others without falling into authoritarian control. Building a solid inner core is not something that comes from fleeting inspiration, but the result of a process of living with observation, self-reflection, and letting go. Those with a solid self are often people who have gone through crises without collapsing, who have been pushed to their limits without breaking. They don't avoid pain, they walk through it. And that very act forges in them a quiet strength, unpretentious but persistent. One of the clearest signs of a person with a solid self is that they don't act to fill a void. They don't rush into work just to forget their fears. They don't make money to hide insecurities. They don't build relationships just to alleviate feelings of loneliness. They can do everything, but they do it from clarity, not from lack. The greatest quality of a person with a steady mind is their abiding presence within themselves. They are not pulled by the crowd, not forced to choose sides, not needing to always be right to feel sufficient. They know when to retreat, when to advance, and most importantly, they are not attached to outcomes. They do their best but let go completely. Such a person is very difficult to manipulate. They are not easily swayed by promises, not panicked by rumors, nor easily provoked by emotional ploys. They live deeply, not superficially. They act because they see the need, not because they are pushed. And so they can go the distance while others are still grappling with their own distractions. Many people confuse stability with rigidity, but a solid self is not about clinging to rules. It's about flexibility rooted in truth. They can change plans, adjust strategies, or even start over without losing themselves. They can bend without breaking, retreat without losing their spirit. Their adaptability is not surrender but wisdom. A solid self is also not an immune emotional state. They still hurt when they lose, still grieve when betrayed, still feel disappointed when expectations aren't met. But they don't lose themselves in those emotions. They allow them to pass, but don't let them dictate their lives. They don't resist emotions, nor do they let emotions control them. In times of change, those with a great mind, those with a solid inner core, are precisely the ones capable of quietly leading others. They don't need to carry a flag and walk in front, don't need to stand on a podium, but their presence makes others feel secure, enlightened, and sufficient. They are pillars not because of power, but because of their weighty presence. And you too can become such a person. You don't need to be extraordinary, don't need to stand out. You just need to return daily to examine how you're living, gradually shedding layers of pretense, illusions, and unsuitable impositions. Everything you let go will bring you closer to yourself. And when you touch the part of yourself that has nothing left to hide, where you no longer have to strain to be someone else, that is when you begin to live from a solid self. When you are stable within, nothing external is strong enough to break you. And when you are unbroken, you can be a sanctuary for many others, not through theory, but through your own quiet strength. 10. Designing your life, living with purpose, like a system. Most people don't live by design, they live by inertia. They wake up, go to work, spend money, socialize, react, and worry, as if it's a programmed sequence of actions dictated by external circumstances, societal expectations, or even things they've never stopped to question. And when life veers off course, they blame luck, others, or fate, without realizing that they themselves have been living like an undesigned system. Someone who lives as a designed system doesn't let things happen randomly. They don't live to just get things done, but to align with a principle. Every choice, every habit, every relationship, every goal is part of a purposeful structure. There's no arbitrary randomness, no whatever happens, happens. Every part of life is interconnected, like links in a chain, with a goal, logic, and reason for existing. Living as a system begins by reprogramming your life patterns. Life patterns are familiar reactions, sequences of behaviors repeated day after day. If you constantly panic when work changes, snap at others when there's disagreement, give up when things get tough, or feel empty when there's nothing to do, that's not personality. That's a pattern. And if that pattern isn't reprogrammed, it will lead you to the same outcome. No matter if you try to change your environment, find a new partner, or get a new job. Someone who lives with a system understands that true change doesn't come from superficial actions, but from fundamental structure. They don't patch individual tears. They redesign the entire fabric. They don't react to each problem, but return to ask if their current lifestyle is leading them to what they truly want. If the answer is no, they don't try to endure. They decisively redraw the blueprint. Clear life goals, not goals society imposes on you, but what feels right, clear, and worth living for. Personal value system. What principles are non-negotiable? What are you willing to compromise? And what will you never compromise? Living and working environment. Does it support or deplete your energy? Does it align with the direction you're heading? Daily behavior patterns are the small steps you repeat each day, bringing you closer to what you want. People with a system don't wait for motivation to live right. They create structures that help them avoid overexerting themselves. For example, instead of deciding daily what to eat, when to exercise, or where to work from, they streamline those decisions into a clear schedule. They design their living spaces to promote focus. They create rules for themselves not to limit freedom, but to protect what's important. Life design also includes automating what's right. If you have to use willpower every day to do the right thing, you'll burn out. But if you design your life so that the right thing becomes the default, you no longer need to expend that effort. People who live with a system don't strain. They do what's right because everything around them has been arranged to support it. Living as a system isn't about becoming robotic. On the contrary, it's the only way to live freely and sustainably. Freedom doesn't come from having no rules, but from mastering the structure of your own life. When everything is clearly connected, you don't need to control too much because the flow has been designed to run in the right direction. People who live by design can be very flexible, but they don't lose their way. They can change methods, but not their core. They can fail, but not lose direction. And most importantly, they live in clarity. A clarity that comes from within, unswayed by external chaos. If you feel your life is chaotic, it's not because you lack ability, but perhaps because you're not living by any system. You're reacting instead of being proactive. You're putting out fires instead of building, and you're drifting instead of steering. Stop redesign from the ground up, from values, from patterns, from daily behaviors. Don't live like a piece of paper blown by the wind. Live like an architect, not of a house, but of your own life. When everything within you aligns, no matter how the outside world changes, you will still be the one building, not the one struggling. 11. Leading with others. Collaboration and influence for collective strength. One of the biggest illusions of intelligent people is thinking they can do everything alone. They believe their individual wisdom is enough to overcome any difficulty, and that collaboration only slows progress. But in reality, the further you go, the more you need companions. No one becomes a true master living isolated from the flow of others. An intelligent person who isolates themselves is condemning themselves to a life of erosion. Knowing how to collaborate is a sign of maturity. Knowing how to utilize people is the transformation from a skilled individual to a leader. And knowing how to preserve morale within a team is the pinnacle of leadership art. A person with strategic wisdom doesn't seek people to follow their every whim. They seek people who can do what they aren't good at. They don't fear talented people. They need talented people. But more importantly, they know how to utilize talent without losing their own essence, without losing direction, and without letting ego disrupt the system. Utilizing people isn't about giving orders, nor is it about making compromises to gain favor. It's the art of placing the right person in the right position, assigning the right tasks with the right expectations, and creating an environment where that person can grow while remaining aligned with the common vision. Leaders who are skilled at utilizing people don't create subordinates, they create responsible collaborators. To utilize people, one must first understand people, not just their words, but their behaviors, motivations, and their deeper internal layers. Some are skilled specialists but emotionally weak. Some are full of passion but lack discipline. Some excel in the initiation phase but are not suited for the operational phase. If you don't clearly see these layers, you will assign the wrong tasks, place the wrong trust, and ultimately sabotage your team's structure. A good leader doesn't try to turn others into replicas of themselves. They understand that everyone is a unique form of energy, a distinct talent. Instead of forcing uniformity, they orchestrate diversity. They don't need anyone to be perfect. They need a system where weaknesses are cross-compensated and everyone can thrive in their strengths. The biggest trap for highly capable individuals is demanding that others be like them. And when others are not, they criticize, get disappointed, and gradually isolate themselves. But true leaders don't live in wishful thinking. They live in reality. They clearly recognize the true capabilities of others, neither idealizing nor disparaging them, but seeing them as they are. With that clear vision, they assign the right tasks, apply the right pressure, and mentor effectively. In the art of collaboration, a crucial element is maintaining morale, meaning keeping the team from decaying from within. A team doesn't collapse due to external failures, it collapses due to loss of trust, internal competition, lack of transparent communication, two-faced leadership, or favoritism. Morale cannot be forced. It's built through trust, clarity, and consistency. A leader cannot please everyone, but they must be clear to everyone. They don't need to be loved, but they must be respected. Respect comes not from power, but from how they make decisions, how they keep their word, and how they take responsibility. A leader doesn't push benefits, they receive. They don't claim credit, they share it. And that's what creates an authentic charisma that cannot be faked. Leadership isn't about being in a high position, but about having a guiding mindset. Some people hold no official title, yet their presence stabilizes the entire group. Others are labeled team leaders, but their presence only causes people to disconnect. The issue isn't in the role, but in fortitude, wisdom, and genuine presence. A leader doesn't need to always be right, but needs to always be clear. Not always perfect, but always genuine. Not needing to prove superiority, but needing to be transparent about their vision. Others don't need to fear you. They need to trust that by following you, they will grow, not be trampled, and not be exploited. Collaboration doesn't mean no conflict, but a wise person doesn't let conflict fester. They address it early, speak directly, but maintain respect. They don't stay silent until the problem explodes. They also don't rush to conclusions, but ask questions to get to the root. It is through mature communication that they maintain a team in long-term trust, not in suppressed resentment. Ultimately, you cannot lead anyone if you have not led yourself. To utilize others, first be able to utilize yourself. To collaborate, stop fighting with yourself. To preserve morale, live with true character. Not through skills, but through unconditional insight and kindness. A great leader isn't someone who makes a strong impression, but someone who makes others want to be better when they are near them. And a strong organization isn't where there are the most talented people, but where everyone is utilized correctly, maintained properly, and led effectively to grow together without losing their roots. 12. Living as a master, where true power transcends all need for validation. When someone still needs to prove how good they are, still needs external recognition, praise, or applause, their true strength still relies on outward perception. Even if they are genuinely skilled, that skill remains fragile because it depends on others' reactions. But when a person no longer needs to prove anything, no longer lives for external validation, but simply lives according to the clear inner knowing, that is when true strength begins. Those who show off usually don't act to live, but to be seen. They are restless when others don't know who they are. They live in fear of being forgotten, underestimated, or overlooked. And so, they need to display their talents, knowledge, achievements, virtues, anything that can serve as a title. But a wise person is the opposite. They work in silence, not for fame, but because the work is worth doing. Not because someone will see, but because they don't want to live superficially with themselves. A person of substance doesn't need to speak up everywhere they go. Not because they have nothing to say, but because they have seen the value of quietness. They don't rush into arguments, don't need to win every debate. They choose to speak at the right time, in the right place, to the right person, and often they speak little, but every word carries weight. Their presence doesn't come from volume, but from quiet, unostentatious strength. There's something very subtle that deeply insightful people always avoid: identifying themselves with a role. They might be leaders, but don't need to be called the boss. They might possess wisdom, but don't claim to be a master. They don't resist these roles, but also don't cling to them, because they understand that a role is merely a means, not an identity. When they need to drop a role, they do. When they need to step backstage, they don't miss the spotlight. That is the freedom of someone who has transcended the need to be defined. A person who doesn't need to prove anything is someone who is already at peace with themselves. They don't need to compete with anyone, nor do they need others to see them as superior. When they see others doing better than them, they don't feel jealous. When they see others make mistakes, they don't rush to correct them. When they are right, they don't need to announce it. They don't live to be seen, but to truly see clearly. They don't live to stand out, but to stay true to what's right. This attitude is not passive or withdrawn. On the contrary, it's an expression of an inner self that is solidified to the point where it doesn't need to be propped up by words or images. That is the character of someone who lives for what needs to be done, not for who is watching. In today's world, where everyone wants to appear quickly, prominently, and loudly, choosing to live as a master is a very countercultural stance. It requires deep inner clarity that I don't live to win in the eyes of others. I live not to betray what I know to be true. And if I need to be silent to keep the truth from being distorted, I choose silence. Quietness isn't a loss of voice. It's a conscious choice not to waste words, not to fall into meaningless confrontation, not to trade inner strength just to gain an advantage. Wise people usually appear only at the right moment, and when they do, their presence needs no introduction because it carries a depth that others instinctively feel. Inner stability doesn't come from the amount of knowledge you possess, but from no longer being dependent on external validation. You can enter a conversation without needing to say anything clever. You can listen without needing to argue. You can act without needing to post about it. You can live fully without needing an audience. And at that moment, when you are no longer playing any role, you become clearer, stronger, and more trustworthy than ever. Because others no longer see you as someone trying to impress, but as a person living genuinely, deeply, fully. Not for applause, but because the act itself is inherently right. Living as a master is like that. No need to rush to appear because your presence is already clear. No need to chase achievements because true value doesn't need proof. No need to shout about a mission because your very way of living each day is the answer. And no need to argue right or wrong because living rightly is the deepest statement. No one is truly great by speaking loudly. No one is truly stable by being praised. The people who truly make their era bow down, walk in silence. They don't need a stage, no audience, no spotlight. They leave an impact without leaving a sound. They don't preach, they just live rightly. And that very rightness, through how they think, What they refuse, what they quietly carry through, becomes a lingering echo, spreading far in a way no one can measure. If you feel you don't fit those paths of moving fast, speaking loudly and standing out at all costs, then perhaps you belong to a different kind of person, the kind of person who doesn't need to fight for the spotlight because they are the light in how they live, the kind of person who doesn't race to be the most successful, but to be the deepest, most stable, and never lost. True wisdom doesn't stand on a pulpit, doesn't try to teach anyone anything, but simply lives and shares what has truly been seen, experienced, and deeply contemplated along a unique path that cannot be named. A path not for the hurried masses, but for those who are quietly sharpening themselves to become true masters in chaotic times. Wisdom remains here not to lead the crowd, but to awaken those who are silently honing themselves to no longer need the crowd. From Ancient Wisdom Unlocked sincerely, thanks you for dedicating your valuable time to explore these profound layers of wisdom with us. Every story, every philosophy we share is distilled from timeless lessons with the desire to accompany you on your journey to cultivate an authentic, meaningful, and peaceful life. If these insights have resonated with you, if you feel they've offered a fresh and valuable perspective, please hit the like button and share this video with those you believe are also seeking similar values. Each share you make is a small spark that helps spread wisdom to a larger community. To continue this journey of discovery and nurturing your inner wisdom, be sure to subscribe to the Ancient Wisdom Unlocked channel today. We are committed to bringing you high-quality, in-depth content to help you navigate the challenges of modern life, one step at a time. Finally, we'd love to hear your thoughts and feelings. After watching this video, which concept of wisdom resonated with you the most? Did you recognize yourself being stuck in a reactive or instinctive thought pattern? Please share your reflections in the comments below. We're always here to learn and connect with our Ancient Wisdom Unlocked community. May you always live with peace, stability, and clarity on your journey.